Please go to EliTheComputerGuy.com in order to view schematics, code, and more for the projects that you are learning about. Welcome back. So in today's video, I want to do an introduction to Platform as a Service, PaaS. So this is a very important concept in the modern world, and this is one of the ways that a lot of code gets deployed for production environments. Now, one of the big things that confuses a lot of new people is when we start talking about things like serverless architecture, their minds kind of just explode because they say, I don't understand. How can it be a serverless architecture if there has to be code somewhere that's running on something? Doesn't that have to be a server? And the important thing to understand when we start talking about things like serverless architectures is that, again, it's kind of like, yes, there is a server, but you don't really think of it the way you think of old-fashioned servers. So yes, there is a server that runs the code, but logically you don't think of it as a server, right? So back in the old days when we were dealing with servers, if we were going to be deploying applications, right, we would have a physical machine, we would have the operating system, we would then have the service or the application installed on the operating system, and there'd be all of these configurations. So if you wanted to be able to maintain that application, not only did you actually have to maintain the application and the code itself, but you also had to update the operating system, you had to run antivirus scans, you had to do backups, you had to dust out that CPU fan. Because I know some of you young people out there are like, why does he keep talking about CPU fans? Because CPU fans killed more servers than almost anything else. Why'd the server crash? CPU fan. Like, that's just the fact of the matter, right? So back in the old days, if you were going to deploy a new application for either your production environment, so your internal users, or for the outside world, basically, again, you would have that physical machine with the server operating system with the app installed on that, and you would have to maintain all of that. So when you're maintaining a server, you're maintaining not just the application and the code, but you're maintaining the software and the operating system and the drivers and the CPU fan and all of that kind of stuff, right? And that's basically the old way of doing things. That worked. Again, 20 years ago, that was a great way to do stuff. That was better than pen and paper. But nowadays, you don't want to be dealing with that kind of thing, right? If you're a cool Python coder, a Ruby on Rails coder, you don't want to get your hands dirty with things like CPU fans. You just want to be able to deploy your code somewhere and just have that code run. And the cool thing is, in this modern world, you can have that. Again, basically what a platform as a service is it's a platform as a service. The old-fashioned platform as a service that most people are used to is basically web hosting, right? So you think about web hosting. If you're going to deploy a website, right? If you're going to deploy a website, you're not going to build a physical machine. You're most likely not even going to spin up a virtual instance of an operating system. What are you going to do? You're going to go to GoDaddy, you're going to go to Hostgator, you're going to go to one of the 1,000 web hosting solutions out there. You're going to find one with the particular languages that you need, most likely something like PHP, with a database that you need, something like MySQL, and then you're going to upload the code, you're going to do some configuration modifications, and then voila, your website is running without you having to worry about the server, right? You're not worried about CPU fans. You're not worried about antivirus. You're not worried about any of that. You're worried about uploading your code, making sure the configuration files point to the right places, and then your code simply runs. So that's what we're talking about for platform as a service. So this is important nowadays. Again, things that you'd be thinking about, things like web applications, right? So if you're going to be building a web application, whether internally for your company or for your external users, right, you need to be thinking about where are you going to host that application. Again, do you really want to worry about the physical server and all the things that go along with it, or do you simply want to go to a provider that gives all of that to you for a reasonable cost, and then you can just deploy it and not worry about it anymore? Or things to be thinking about is more complicated web applications. Again, you start thinking about these whole serverless architectures, that type of thing, where you're going to have code that's going to do stuff to other things, right? Basically, that code has to reside somewhere so that it can communicate with AWS, so that it can communicate with Azure, so that it can communicate with these cloud-based services, right? So one of the things you can be thinking about is using platform as a service. You put your code up on that PaaS, that platform as a service, and then when it's up there, it can run and it can do things for you. So again, for a platform as a service, you could be doing simple database tasks. So imagine if you wanted to run a report every day and email it about, let's say, sales for your company. So you may not need a website the way you think of a normal website, but you do need some place to run that PHP or that Python code, right? So that code can be sitting up on a platform as a service. It can connect to a database. It can do what's called a select statement and can select, let's say, any sales that happened in the past day. It can sort them based off of whatever you want them sorted on. Basically, it can then print that out to an email and then send that to whoever you want the notification to go to. So think about that. All of that is web-based technology. That's not necessarily a website, right? You do need to have Python or PHP or Ruby to make it run. It does need to connect to a database. It does need to connect to an email service, whether simply through the mail function in PHP or Ruby or through something like SendGrid, right? So it needs all of those cloud web services, but there's no website you're going to go to. It's just automatically going to run in the background. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about platform as a service, and that's why platform as a service is really important right now. So now that you know what platform as a service is, we need to talk about how you're going to select what platform you're going to use for your services, right? So the important thing to remember, again, whenever we're talking about a lot of these technology concepts, is that platform as a service unto itself is just a concept. That doesn't really mean a whole hell of a lot. What you're really going to be looking for is what technologies are being used by vendors in order to give you that platform as a service, right? So if you're going to be coding in a particular language, surprise, whatever vendor you're going to go with needs to support that language, right? So if you're going to be coding in Ruby on Rails and you go to use a platform as a service, you need to make sure that platform actually supports Ruby on Rails. One of the big issues, I suppose you could say, with platforms as a service is you don't get a lot of modifications with the configuration, right? They give you whatever the hell it is that they offer you, and that's it. It's not like you can go to GoDaddy and after you've set up your hosting account, again, if you're basically using just the platform as a service, so just the platform account, it's not like you can go in there and start willy-nilly adding languages, adding interpreters, that type of thing. They're going to tell you what you can use. You get 10 MySQL databases. You get PHP 7. You get this. You get that. You get the other. If you need something else, that's nice. Go find a different vendor. So one of the important things to be thinking about is when we talk about platform as a service, that is just an overall concept. And then what you look at is the vendors then are going to be offering specific technology. So they will specifically say, we are going to be offering you a Linux server that is running Apache, that has PHP 7, that gives you 10 MySQL databases, that does this, and does this. If that's what you need, great, go with that. If not, go somewhere else. So we're going to be taking a look at Hostgator. So one of the things that Hostgator offers is they offer Ruby on Rails where GoDaddy doesn't. So if you're going to need Ruby on Rails, then you would go with Hostgator versus GoDaddy. It doesn't really matter, how many stars the vendor gets. Basically, the requirement is, does it offer what you actually need? And then finally, we're going to take a look at Heroku that shows you kind of how you can start using platform as a service for your overall infrastructure. Again, we start creating a lot larger projects, not simply things such as websites, but again, this larger scale projects where you're going to be doing reports, you're going to be doing notifications, you're going to be maintaining databases, doing a lot of complicated tasks. Then you can go to a service such as Heroku, which offers you even more things than something like GoDaddy or Hostgator will. And so it's something to be thinking about is you have to think about what are your requirements, again, for what you are trying to do, what are your data requirements for things like security? Do you have to have PCI requirements? Do you have to have HIPAA requirements? Do you have to have some other privacy requirements, right? So what you would look at with the platform as a service is basically, are they compliant with those particular things? If they are, use them. If they're not, find something else. Again, do they use the coding languages that you need? So you go and you take a look, and if you're using Ruby on Rails, you just go down the list. You're like, okay, yes, they use Ruby on Rails. Or, nope, they don't use Ruby on Rails. And go from there. Again, if you have a whole bunch of code in Ruby on Rails, it doesn't matter if they support Python because you've got Ruby, right? And then you start looking at some of the other features and functionality that they have, things like backups. So some of them will do things like real-time backups or daily backups. And so that's something that's really nice is if your platform is a service, simply, again, you should be setting up your own backup, to be clear. You should be setting up your own backup and disaster recovery routine yourself. But if they also offer it as a backup to your backup, that can be a valuable thing, right? If for some reason your backup routine crashes and they're offering something like that just as part of the service, that will be good for you. Other things to be thinking about is like denial of service, attack prevention. So does their infrastructure prevent denial of service attacks? Again, if you're dealing with a larger company, or let's say you're dealing with a company that may have some political issues nowadays. Again, politics. Politics is something you have to be thinking about in the modern world of technology. So if you're dealing with like a Breitbart of the world, or you're dealing with, any of these political things, you have some apps for Republicans, or some apps for Democrats, or some apps for Christians, or some apps for Buddhists, or whatever. Something to be thinking about is, does the service that you're using offer protection for denial of service attacks? So if somebody tries to attack the infrastructure that you've built on the platform, will that be mitigated? Will that be prevented? These are some of the things to think about. And again, this isn't basically all you do, and that's what you do in a lot of times in the modern world of technology, is you just look down the tech spec list and you see what they offer. And you're like, okay, well, this one offers this. Ooh, but this offers this. This one offers this. Oh, this one doesn't offer that. Okay, this offers this and this and this. Oh, but this one offers this, this, and this. And then you sit there and you take a look at the price, and you take a look at everything else, and then you decide what's best for your particular situation. So with that, let's go over to the computer. I'll show you 3 examples of platforms as a service. We'll take a look at what GoDaddy offers. We'll take a look at what Hostgator offers, and then we'll take a look at what Heroku offers. Again, these are simply 3 examples. Like a lot of the things I talk about, there are a zillion examples out there. I'm just picking these because they are representative of what you will find. And so when you're going out in the real world, do a lot of your own research and figure out what works best for your particular situation. So the first platform that we're going to be taking a look at is GoDaddy, and we're going to simply be looking at their web hosting plans. Now, I know some people may be like, what is this? Eli's just showing us web hosting plans. That's not real technology. But again, an important thing to be thinking about, right? If you're running PHP code or Python code, you're hitting some databases and doing some basic stuff, again, a simple web hosting plan may realistically be all that you actually need. So we're taking a look at GoDaddy here. Again, their web hosting. You can go down and you can take a look at the different prices they have, everything from $4.33 per month to $19.99 per month. Though, do realize with all of these companies that they do these weird sales. So it's $4.33 a month, but then when you renew, it'll go up to $9. Now, if you're with a real company, $9 should not matter. Even $24 should not matter. But if you're with a smaller company, that price jump may actually matter. And when you go to services such as something like Heroku, if they offer a sale, the price difference may be just insanely large. So this is something that you have to keep in mind when you're going to be buying cloud-based services, is when you initially sign up, they're going to give you one price, and then when you renew, it might go up significantly. So I've seen this with things like dedicated servers. So I used to rent dedicated servers for different projects that I was doing. And the first year you rented the dedicated server, it would be $60. The second year you rented the exact same dedicated server, it was $120. So it went up by $60 per month. So $60 per month is $720 per year. So if you're running, 5 dedicated servers, and initially you're paying $60 a month for each of them, that may not be too bad. But it flips over to the next year, you're now spending $120 per month for each of them. That may become a killer expense. So again, one of the important things, if you're going to be a modern IT professional, is you have to take a look at things such as budgeting. Then you go down and you take a look at the basic stuff with any kind of web hosting. It'll tell you like how many websites you can run. So this may be important for you. Again, you may want to have a number of different websites running for whatever particular project you're using. Basically, different domain names to point to things. How much storage, bandwidth. So most stuff should be unmetered bandwidth at this point. So you can take a look. So again, the economy gets you unlimited websites. That may be valuable. Again, for an extra couple bucks a month to have unlimited domain names for your hosting plan. That may actually be very valuable. Unlimited subdomains. That might be good for you. Again, especially if you're dealing with services or whatever. So like email.yourcompany.com. database.yourcompany.com, dealing with that kind of thing. Then if you go up to the $12.99, you can see more processing power that might be valuable to you or not. Let's say if you're going through and you're doing something like cleaning out databases. So let's say a lot of data is coming into your databases every day, and then every night you want to go through and you want to clean out bad data or do some kind of database correction. Having more processing power might be valuable for you. SSL certificate. So this comes with an SSL certificate. That could be a very valuable thing if you're actually going to be having users log in to whatever application that you're creating, premium DMS, whatever, unlimited databases, so on and so forth. And you can see there's more options here. So this is something, again, what you need to be thinking about is this may seem like simple stuff, but again, having things such as unlimited subdomains, depending on what particular project you're doing, that may be very useful. Again, when you start thinking about like a service-oriented architecture, so in your code, you start pointing towards subdomains versus things like IP addresses. Having a crap ton of different subdomains that your code can point to may actually be very useful to you. Or it may be a bad idea. It depends on your code. You're going to go down. It's going to tell you what all plans include. The important thing is we're going to keep scrolling down. We're going to take a look. So it has cPanel for Linux, if cPanel matters for you. That's something to be thinking about too, is when you have administrators that are going to be interacting with whatever platform as a service that you use, is it something that they know how to use? Again, whether it's cPanel, whether it's some other type of user interface for their service, having something like cPanel can be useful because a lot of IT professionals already know cPanel. Again, just because it's a graphical user interface does not mean it is quote unquote easy to use, and a lot of things can get buried in weird places. So as I always say, standardizing on certain products can be very useful. So the fact that they use something like cPanel, you can go through, you can take a look at the different things, and then we can go down here and we take a look at the plan details again. So the 100 gigs of disk space or the unlimited, the monthly bandwidth, how many CPUs, how much memory theoretically, things like FTP users if that matters to you, things like MySQL databases. So 10 at 1 gig a piece, 25 at 1 gig a piece, unlimited at 1 gig a piece. Something to think about, database backup and restore, direct database access, DNS management, subdomains, alias, and then we keep going down here is when we'll actually find the different programming languages that you can use. So we go down here, what we can see is, okay, so we can use PHP 7.2, 7.1, 7.0, 5.4 through 5.6. And again, this can be very important for you if you're using legacy code. So let's say you have code that was written 10 years ago to do some services, and you want to deploy that somewhere. If it's not this particular version of PHP, you may run into issues if you try to put it onto this particular platform as a service. So that's something to think about. Custom php.ini. So the php.ini file, this is where you can configure things such as max upload size, a whole bunch of different configurations. Again, in the Linux world, you just get this whole list of configurations. And so an important thing to be looking at is, can you actually modify something like a php.ini file, or are you stuck with whatever the default is? If you're stuck with whatever the default is, that might run you into problems. Then this offers you Python. So if you care about Python, it offers you Perl, if you still care about Perl. And so that's the basic idea of what's going on here with the GoDaddy shared hosting. Now, if we go over and we take a look at Hostgator, so we can see that they've got different plans, again, for different prices. They're all the way down to $42 per month. Though again, you'll notice the star. Always notice the star. See, there's that star. Always got to be careful about that. And they got the business plan for $5.95, so on and so forth. And then you scroll down and you can see what they offer. Again, things like WordPress hosting, MySQL database. So they offer unlimited for even their smallest plan, CGI, fast CGI, PHP 5. All accounts come with support for PHP 5, right? So if you've got code written in PHP 7, then you probably don't want to use Hostgator. They have Ruby on Rails though. So if you're using Ruby on Rails as your programming language, maybe you want to go here for the Ruby on Rails. Again, they got Perl, they got Python, they got cron jobs if you care about that. Something called curl. Curl is Oh, a way you can deal with like URLs through things like PHP. So they offer actual curl support that might be valuable for you. And so again, this is one of those things that you really need to be looking at with your particular situation is you need to sit down and talk with the coders or talk with whoever developed the code that you're going to be uploading and really ask what the hell they need, right? If you have PHP, but you don't have curl and they need curl, then you will run into problems. Remember, all this is, to be clear, all this is paint by numbers. They tell you they need PHP 7, you find something with PHP 7. They tell you they need curl, you find something with curl. They tell you what they need, and you simply go out and find whatever the hell that is. Then we can go over and we can take a look at Heroku. So Heroku is more of an enterprise class platform as a service. This is really what you would think is, whoa, this is real IT. This is real IT platform as a service. And as such, they have a whole bunch of stuff going on. So they got the Heroku runtime. Heroku runs your apps inside dynos, smart containers on a reliable, fully managed runtime environment. So with this, developers deploy their code written in Node, Ruby, Java, PHP, Python, Go, Scala, or Clojure to build a system which produces an app that's ready for execution. And so again, this is what you need to be thinking about for what particular coding languages that you're going to be using. They got the Heroku developer experience, then they've got the data services, but one of the important things is to look here, and again, for them, security and compliance. Developers from around the world entrust sensitive data to Heroku, and nothing is more important to us than honoring our custodial commitments to protect that data. Heroku regularly performs audits and maintains PCI, HIPAA, ISO, and SOC compliance to further strengthen our trust with customers. So again, if you are creating something that's going to be dealing with healthcare records, if you're going to be dealing with things that deal with things like credit card numbers, that kind of thing, then something like PCI and HIPAA compliance is incredibly important. If you're not, then it's not. Again, this is all kind of one of those paint by numbers things. And so you need to be thinking about you need to think not just about how many CPUs you get and how much RAM it is and how much it costs, but then you need to think about all the different languages and other different services they can provide. And then you need to look at things, again, like security and compliance. Being PCI and HIPAA compliant may be very valuable for you, depending on what you're trying to actually deploy for your end users or for the users that are going to be interacting with whatever application that you're going to be creating. So that's a basic overview of platform as a service, PaaS, as the cool kids say. Actually, I really don't think the cool kids say that. I don't think anybody says PaaS. I think they say platform as a service, or PaaS. But anyways, basically that is an overview of PaaS, platform as a service for you. Again, this is one of those things that gets overlooked in the modern world of technology. Again, people think of things like web hosting, and they almost look at it as something like a stupid little gadget. Oh, that's just like a stupid little smartwatch or a stupid little smartphone. That's not real technology. I want to deal with real technology with AWS or Azure or something like that. But again, the important thing that you need to be thinking about for your particular infrastructure in your production environment is, do you actually need AWS or Azure? Don't get me wrong, I love AWS, I love Azure, and when you're building real, like full-scale cloud-based infrastructure, by all means, go AWS and Azure all the way. On the other hand, you need to be thinking about it. If you've just got a couple of databases up on the web, you're dealing with some kind of, again, like email, notification systems, newsletter type systems, pulling reports out of databases for things like sales, that kind of thing, overlooking just a good old basic GoDaddy hosting plan might be a bad thing. Again, simply going with something like GoDaddy or Hostgator, someplace where you can throw, either your PHP or your Python code. That code can interact with whatever you need it to interact with, send off some notifications or fire off some kind of other events. You can have a very robust system for literally $5 a month. And again, depending on what your security requirements are, that may be enough. Now, again, to be clear, if you're dealing with PCI, if you're dealing with HIPAA, if you're dealing with trade secrets, if you're dealing with anything that really needs to be super secret, then you go with Heroku or something else. But a lot of people, they worry about privacy, and they worry about a lot of these security issues, when in reality the information that they're dealing with just really nobody really cares about. It's really kind of basic type of information. So something to think about is, again, you just deploy your code up to something like GoDaddy, and that may do everything that you need, again, for a couple of dollars a month. So that's the basic idea of platform as a service. Again, there's a lot of different platforms out there. Again, there's probably 1,000 different platforms out there with a hell of a lot of different options. Some of the warnings that I'll give you is be careful with going with real and true startup companies. Again, one of the valuable things with going with GoDaddy or Hostgator or Heroku, Heroku's a big one, is that you know that they will be around, right? Your code is not of any use if the startup that's running the servers goes bankrupt, which can be a real problem. Like with a lot of this code, it's a lot of fire and forget. Let's look at code. You shouldn't forget about it. You should go back and take a look at it every couple of months or so. But again, like I say, if you're doing notifications or basic maintenance type code, you just want that code to be up there, and you really don't want to have to worry about it very often. And so if you put that code onto servers owned by a startup that goes belly up, you can run into a lot of problems very quickly. Again, one of the big issues in the real world of IT is people create systems, and initially when they create the system, it's kind of almost like an intern project, or it's a stupid little side thing. It's like, oh, that's just some stupid little side thing somewhere. And then somebody finds out about the side thing and they start using it. And then they tell everybody in their group about it, and they all start using it. And then the executive realizes that thing exists, and they start using it. And all of a sudden, your CEO is now pulling reports from this piece of crap system that somebody spun up. And that CEO is like literally making business decisions based off of the reports of that piece of crap system. And so something to really think about is, again, if you put that onto infrastructure of a startup company and that startup company goes out of business, it may not just be a pain for you. Your CEO may be screaming to high hell because they have gotten used to having that service available to them, and now that it disappeared, somebody's head is going to roll. So I would say with the whole platform as a service, I would argue with this type of thing, go with companies that you feel secure and stable with. Again, the larger companies that have funding, that have a revenue model. Because you can go with some of the cool, sexy new ones, but if they disappear, that can run you into a lot of issues. And then beyond that, something to think about is, again, one of the things that I argue is always try to standardize as much as possible. So even if you're using GoDaddy or Hostgator or whatever else, basically, if you start deploying onto that platform, try to start deploying everything onto that platform. The last thing in the world you want is for some of your applications to be running on GoDaddy, and some of your applications to be running on Hostgator, and some of your applications to be running on this weird ass thing over here, and a couple of your other applications, oh no, they're actually on Heroku. And then, again, if you have to go through and do audits to verify your code is doing what the hell it's supposed to be doing, if you have to do any migrations, if heaven forbid you fall over from a heart attack and somebody has to come in behind you and figure out not just the usernames and passwords, but literally where all of this crap is running, that can be an absolute nightmare. So again, with the platform as a service, one of the issues with it is so easy and so inexpensive to spin up services that it's really easy, again, to go with GoDaddy and Hostgator and this, and all of a sudden you're using 10 different vendors to more or less honestly do the exact same thing. And all that does is it just creates a nightmare for paperwork and what the IT managers have to actually deal with to make sure that everything is doing what it's supposed to do. And God help you when a corporate audit comes through, that's just going to be a nightmare. So really think about standardization and think about companies that you think are stable and reliable and will be around for a while. And past that, again, basically write your code, throw it up to whatever platform you have of your choice, and life will be good because you will not be worrying about CPU fans dying. So with that, as always, I enjoyed doing this video and look forward to seeing you at the next one.